Hi YouTube! My name is Michaela or Michaela Sage, and welcome to my very first YouTube video ever! This is my Booktube Newbie Tag, kind of just to introduce myself to y'all and let you know a little bit about what I'm about and what this channel will be. Alright, question number 1 is, why am I starting a Booktube channel? So I want to start a Booktube channel because I recently started watching Booktube within the last couple of months, and I really love the content. I've gotten a lot of good book recommendations about it, and I've heard a lot of thoughts that I, wouldn't have without access to this content, and so I kind of want to take my shot at it and share some opinions that I have about books and maybe find a little community where we can share our thoughts back and forth. I used to read a lot. Obviously I love reading, but I got out of the habit of it a couple years ago. I think pretty much as soon as I became an adult, because I was in the weird in-between when I was like 18, 19 years old, where I wasn't relating to YA anymore, which is what I was typically used to reading, but I felt really intimidated to make the switch over to adult literature. And so for a couple years, I kind of just stayed in this in-between limbo where I was reading YA books I wasn't really satisfied with, but I was too scared to make the leap over into adult literature. But now, I'm 22 years old, and for the past year, I've been exploring more into adult literature and taking that leap. This channel is also to document my exploration into that and seeing what books I like as an adult and working my way out of that reading slump. Question number 2. What got me into reading? The answer is really simple. It's my mom. She is my best friend. We're like this, but my mom's also a librarian, so growing up reading was always just like really normalized in my household. I don't think I ever really made the choice to be a reader. It was just what everyone did, and so I think growing up in that kind of environment, it made it really easy for me to fall in love with books. Question 3, what are the books that I like? So I have a pile of some of my favorite books right here. I'll talk about them one by one. So first, I have Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is a book that I had to read for a class. It was my literature and media class, where we basically took pieces of writing and then compared them to their adaptations. So this was the first one we did, and it was my favorite one from the whole class because I wasn't expecting a horror novel to be so comedic, and it really took me by surprise. I think one part that stands out in particular is in the very beginning. Count Dracula, he sees him climbing the wall, like scaling the outside of the manor, and the main character is like, "It's nothing, we all got our weird little quirks, I don't need to worry about that." Sir? What? And it was just like stuff like that. Another reason why I really like Dracula is because it's a mixed media book, so it's not just one person's inner monologue, one person's thoughts. It's told through multiple different perspectives with letters, newspaper clippings, stuff like that. So very interesting read. And also, without Dracula, we would not have Nosferatu, which, if you didn't know, is just a plagiarized version of Dracula. The names are hardly even changed. It's really silly if you look at the similarities. But Robert Eggers' Nosferatu is like one of my favorite movies, so thank you Dracula for painting the way for Nosferatu. Great book. Next up, Ecology of a Cracker Childhood by Janice Ray. So this is an autobiographical work from Janice Ray, who lived in middle South Georgia, and I personally am from North Georgia. I'm near the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, but I have grandparents that live where she lives, my granny and my papa, and I spent a lot of time with them growing up. So some of the stories that she tells are extremely relatable for me, and I loved hearing about her family and relating it back to my family. And it was really just really touching hearing her stories and her anecdotes, and it was really interesting hearing specifically the way they talk about mental health and mental illness that ran through her family. I'll be talking more about this book specifically in my spring reading wrap-up that I'm gonna do, I think next week. Hopefully it'll be out, because I just read this for school this past semester. But it was really good, and in addition to talking about her family, it also talks about, like, every other chapter is about the natural resources of the area where she grew up, which is the longleaf pine ecosystem, which is an ecosystem that is very fastly degrading and dwindling, and the animals in it are in grave danger of becoming extinct because we are not protecting the ecosystem as we should be. So I am getting a degree in Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Management, so I am very interested in conservation and sustainability. So this book, it was beautiful. I think it is a great way to get people to connect with Southern heritage while also connecting with the natural resources and learning to care about them. So thank you, Janice Ray. Okay, next up is Pink Poppy Midnight. This is a book that I read for the first time when I think I was 14 or 15, but it's about 3 teenagers, one boy named Midnight, and then 2 girls named Wink and Poppy, and they have kind of a weird love triangle going on between the 3 of them. Midnight is the main boy character, Poppy is kind of the typical mean girl who leads him on for attention, and Wink is the manic pixie dream girl next door that he kind of falls in love with this summer. However, there is a prank that goes wrong, and Poppy goes missing. And then all of a sudden, people are getting these weird letters from her. They're seeing her in the forest. Is she a ghost? Is she haunting them for punishment for the prank gone wrong? You don't know. It's really interesting. There's lots of twists and turns in this book. Not everyone is who they appear to be. It's really interesting, but it stuck with me the first time I read it, and so I still consider it one of my favorites to this day. I really like this book. Next, The Selection. This is another YA. Obviously it's by Kira Cass. And this one is very close to my heart. I read it when I was in 7th grade, so when I was 12. In 7th grade, my English class, we were reading the Giver series, but I had already read the Giver series, and so my teacher said that because I'd already read it, I could read whatever I wanted during the Giver reading time. So I read the Selection series instead. And I remember the 2nd chapter of this book when America sneaks out to the treehouse, you know what I'm talking about, and she starts making out with Aspen in the treehouse. I was blushing so hard in class. I had never read a scene like that before, and it's also just cute. And when they end up in the end, like, you can't be mad about that. I was always team, I've always in my brain read it Max On, but I think it's supposed to be Max In. I've always been team Max On. It's a good book. I love this one. It'll always be near and dear to my heart. Finally, because this is my favorite book series of all time. I'm a big fan of Twilight. I am team Jacob. I watched the movies first when I was like 19 years old because despite my mom being a librarian, she was not a fan of Twilight. And so I watched the movies as an adult, and I was like, well, now I gotta read the books because they have just such a unique vibe. The aesthetic, it's so camp. I am obsessed with it. Read the books, made me fall in love with it even more because the characterization you get of Bella in the books that doesn't exist in the movies, it's criminal. How they gut at her character in the movies is criminal. I understand that it's so, like, the person watching can, like, put their own thoughts and feelings onto her and feel like they're the main character, but, like, really? Because she, like, has a job and she cooks in the books. And then in the movie, it's like her whole life is just school, and then think of Edward. She reads. She's a reader. Bella Swan is a reader. She would probably subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hey, if you like Twilight, subscribe. My favorite one in particular is the 2nd one, because I'm team Jacob, and that's where we get the most Jacob content. We're ignoring the last one. Don't tell me that he imprinted on her child. That's not the Jacob that I know and love. I'm New Moon Jacob fan. I really appreciate their storyline because I really resonate with the story of, like, Edward leaving and then Bella being really depressed for months and then Jacob kind of helping draw her out of that and find her happiness again. She literally compares him to the sun to bring the light back to her life. She imagines having a peaceful life with children with him, which is what she thinks she could never have done with Edward. And her father even says to her, like, talking about Jacob, you have to learn to love what's good for you. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that it's a really good lesson that you could choose to be with, like, the cool, weird, edgy guy that makes you feel all up and down, but hey, go be with the person that's like really nice and your best friend and loves you. And I think that's a lesson that even Stephenie Meyer herself could have listened to, because I am so anti-Edward, especially after reading Midnight Sun. If you have not read Midnight Sun, just skip ahead like 20 seconds because I'm gonna spoil it. This is your warning. This is your warning. I'm doing it now. Edward, in like all of Midnight Sun, planning on leaving Bella. Hey, what was that about? Hey, I like had kind of some sympathy for him because it's like it's hard being like immortal and all brooding and a teenager forever. But after reading Midnight Sun and knowing that the whole second half of the book is just him saying like, I know I'm telling Bella that I love her, but I'm leaving. He took her to prom, and the whole time at prom was planning on leaving her. Monster. It severed any single tie I had to that man. Get that yapper out of here. Get him out. Yeah, Twilight is the best. It's my favorite, and I will be leaving this up here because I love it so much. We're gonna just like stare at her lovingly. Next is what are my favorite genres. So obviously I have 2 vampire books in my like favorites. I like fantasy, but I think I prefer like urban fantasy over typical fantasy, just like magic and monsters in like a modern day normal setting. I think sometimes it's a little hard for me to get into just straight fantasy books because unless there is a fully fledged out magic system and like over explaining of the universe and how it works, it's really hard for me to invest myself in a story and like really let myself into it. I just end up having a lot of questions that distract me from the plot, and I think a lot of fantasy books have kind of dumb names. The people have dumb names, and that's like rude to say, but if I'm reading a book, like I read Stardust by Neil Gaiman, that will be in my spring recap. The main character's name is Tristan. You made me read Tristan over 100 times. And I will never forgive Neil Gaiman. There's other things I'll never forgive Neil Gaiman for. Shame on him. But Tristan is pretty high up there on the offense list. So I tend to like urban fantasy more than straight fantasy. And I know that romantasy is a big thing right now. I've never read a romantasy book. I'm open to it. I think I might actually read my first one like on this channel and document my journey through it. But I am not a big romance person just like on its own. Obviously this one has vampires in it, which makes it a little more interesting, but I don't know. I haven't really read a lot of just straight romance books. I'm down to. I have some on my shelf that I need to read. Because again, this is about me exploring my opinions as an adult. I've neglected myself with reading for the past few years. It's very shameful. Also, my problem with like romantasy and romance is that I'm not a big spice fan. Obviously, I'm an adult. I'm 22 years old. I know what happens behind closed doors. I don't need to read about it in detail. I feel like sometimes it furthers the plot and it's necessary. Like I read Game Changers and Heated Rivalry, which will be in my spring recap that I'm gonna upload soon. So yeah, I do tend to prefer books like Twilight that's a fade to black where you know what happened but it doesn't express in pages of detail what happened. I have a friend that keeps suggesting Fourth Wing to me, and I don't know if he's read it, but every single time he sees me reading he's like, have you read Fourth Wing yet? And I'm like, no, but I don't know, maybe it's time. Maybe I'll read it on this channel if that's what y'all want to see. I also really like horror. I really like ghosts and witches, and gothic horror in particular is kind of my bread and butter. And I am trying out some murder mystery books. I've never really read murder mysteries before. Typically with movies, I stay away from like thrillers because I'm not a big gore fan. I also just don't really like human on human violence. I feel like there's just so much of that in our day-to-day lives, and like if I wanted to see people killing people, I'd turn on the news, and so like I don't really want to read that in my free time. But I do have 2 murder mysteries that I thought sounded interesting that are on my to-be-read shelf over on the corner of my room, so hopefully I'll get to those soon and I will fully form my opinion on whether or not I'm down for like horror and murder mysteries with like people rather than like supernatural entities, which is what I tend to lean towards. It doesn't scare me as much. I guess it's like the baby way out of like if it's ghosts then I'm not gonna be paranoid afterwards, but I don't know, I will try anything once. I also I am a naturalist, so I do tend to read a lot of books set in the outdoors or about like people and their connections to where they're from. So like I have a book about the Okefenokee Swamp that I'm actually writing a paper on, that I'm gonna, fingers crossed, get published. That would be really fun. But I also I love Ecology of a Cracker Childhood. I have to read a lot of books like that for school, since I am getting a natural resources degree. So I don't really know what genre that is, but yeah, I do like nature-y books set about the outdoors. What is something unique that I think I bring to BookTube? I don't know, I mean, I mentioned that I'm a naturalist and I read a lot of nature-y, outdoorsy books, so I think that's something that's kind of unique. I don't think I've seen a lot of creators talking about books like that, especially like the nonfiction autobiographical ones, which it's not the majority of what I read, but I think I read 2 out of like the 7 or 8 books I read last season in the spring were nature and nonfiction, so it is something that interests me. So if it's something that interests you too, stick around, or if you haven't heard a lot about those kind of books, you will with me. I also think that something unique that I bring to the table is like my southern heritage. I don't think I've seen a lot of other booktubers who are from the South, so if you are, hi, let's be friends. Like, dude, that would be awesome. But I think that it gives me a different perspective than a lot of other people have on books, especially if it is taking place in the South or dealing with Southern people. It is interesting because I feel like in the media, it is very easy to fall into the stereotype of like Southern people being ignorant and not smart and just like giving the accent to someone who's supposed to be a comedic character. And you know, that doesn't always feel nice when that's like the majority of the representation that you get. And that's part of the reason why I really appreciate the Hunger Games series and how the Covey is handled. I think they do a great job with the accents and the music and like representing their connection with their like home and the nature. Like that's something that I really related to when I was reading Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and then watching the movie. I think they did a beautiful job with that, and especially with the music, because I don't know if like y'all know this, but like some of the songs they were singing were not like just made up for the movie. Like they're actual folk songs from like the 30s, 40s, and I really like folk music. I have an Appalachian Mountain dulcimer that I can play, so that was like really beautiful for me to see like that represented like in a big movie like that. It was amazing. And yeah, I think, I don't know, I'll have some unique thoughts and opinions that other people don't have. And obviously, like, I have to come to it from a place of nuance because I love living in Georgia. I'm very proud of where I'm from. I feel like this is my home. It's part of my identity. I consider myself y'alternative. But like, it takes a certain level of nuance to acknowledge like when you love where you live, but you also want to improve it and you know the ways that you could make it better. So that's where I'm looking at things from. What is my favorite place to read? You're looking at it. This is my book nook that I've made in my bedroom. So I have my lovely little desk here. I have a candle warmer and a candle, which both of those were Christmas gifts I got. The candle is orange scented and it's delightful. And then I have this little like circle chair. It's brown. I have a lovely fawn colored blanket on it, which is beautiful. Fun fact, here's my naturalist fun fact of the day. Fawns typically lose their spots at 4 to 6 months. So my blanket would be 4 to 6 months old if it was a real fawn. But this is where I do most of my reading if it is like cold outside or if it's raining, which I don't know if you can hear, it's raining right now. I feel like it's been raining for the whole past freaking month. But when it's nice outside, I like to read on my back porch, either sitting just like crisscross on the ground or sitting in a little chair staring out at the woods in my backyard. That's very peaceful. I love doing that. The birds can get a little loud, which is distracting, but most of the time I can tune them out and just focus on my book. And I also really like reading in a hammock if I have the opportunity. A hammock is amazing. Porch swings, also amazing for reading. Just like anywhere that I can like lean back and like get my little feet up and like have my book in my lap, that's like ideal reading where I can kind of curl up a little bit. So I think those are all of the questions. Thank you so much for sticking around with me. I hopefully should have my spring reading wrap up posted in like a week. That's my goal, fingers crossed, where I'll discuss, I think it's the 8 books that I read during March, April, and May. And if you're here, you might as well like and subscribe. I don't know, you hung out with me this long. But yeah, thank you for sticking around for my Booktube Newbie Tag.